Here is Vivek Ramaswamy, who knows all about this story. Vivek, do you find the timing Bankman-Fried's arrest a little, say, convenient for Democrats?
I found it outright suspect. And it's not just for Democrats. I think it's for the bureaucracy in the federal government. My sense, Stuart, is that the people who are running the DOJ did not want to be embarrassed when SBF was pressed by questions from lawmakers. If SBF came out looking bad, the number one question coming out of that hearing would be, why haven't they arrested him yet? I think it's very clear they wanted to get ahead of that. And I think it's a little bit sad to see, again, yet another example of the politicization of the criminal justice process. I think it would have reflected higher integrity if they had just waited to let him. I mean, it was the day after. I think it's pretty clear that they pulled that decision up just to get in front of it. Instead, let the public have the transparency and then explain your rationale afterwards. And I think that politicization, I think, is a regrettable part of the story, Stuart. Now, the other thing that I thought was striking here is SBF allegedly committed consumer fraud. He was shooting from the hip, said one thing, did another. And it's hard to escape the parallels between even what we see happening at a very different company, Twitter. Again, shooting from the hip, telling consumers they're doing one thing when in fact doing another. And I think it's worth using this SBF and FTX episode for the entire business community to look itself in the mirror and ask itself how different their practices really are in how transparently they communicate to consumers. And it's easy to hang SBF at the stake. Perhaps that should be done, metaphorically speaking. But I think that the harder part is actually scrutinizing other companies whose versions of consumer fraud is different, not in kind, maybe only if in degree.
Yeah, let's talk Twitter for a minute. This new batch of files released by Barry Weiss reveals dissenters inside Twitter questioning the call for President Trump to be banned. But eventually, the activists won. I think they just hate him, and the activists took it out on him. Am I right?
Well, I think one of the most striking things is actually getting into the facts. One of the things that Trump said that triggered Vijaya Gadde, who was a senior official who was making a lot of these decisions, general counsel, head of trust at the company, was his use of the word American patriots. I just want to pause on that, Stuart. That is striking to say that that is a code word, that is a signal for incitement to violence. Now, I'm not defending what Trump did that day. Far from it. I thought he should have handled the situation far differently than he did. But the question here is Twitter's policymaking decisions when they're retrofitting rules to effectively get to the conclusion they already wanted to get to, which was one-sided censorship. To top it off, something different than they told the public and their user base that they were doing, which is the definitional form of fraud, telling your users you're doing one thing when, in fact, you are doing another.
I noticed that Twitter has ended the Trust and Safety Committee, disbanded it as of this morning, I believe. Was that committee in charge of content moderation?
Well, I think it's very amorphous what that committee was exactly in charge of, which is why it needs to be disbanded. And anytime you get into the deep corporate apparatus, by the way, I think the same thing goes for a lot of government bureaucratic apparatuses, too. The bureaucracy takes on a life of its own. And I think at a certain point in time, the only answer, both in the private sector and in the public sector, isn't to reform that bureaucracy from within. It is to shut it down and to create something new to fill that void.
Yes, indeed.
I'm glad to see Elon taking that debureaucratization step at Twitter. We could use more of that across both the public and private sector.
Yes, we could. Vivek, thanks for being here. I know we'll see you again real soon. Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks.
Thank you.